The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission visits communities across Canada to answer questions about how it regulates the nuclear industry, protecting the health, safety, and security of Canadians and the environment. One of the ways we do this is through an information session called CNSC 101. This is part 2 of the last of 5 videos produced from this CNSC 101 information session. It explains the Public Commission hearing process and how the public can get involved.
Is that 2-day process that you outlined, is that sort of the practice that the commission has developed, or is this like handed down on a stone platter? So if the commission decided for a particular application, they really wanted to have 3 days of hearings as opposed to 2, or there was hardly any interest in that particular nuclear reactor, so they were only going to have 1. Do they have that flexibility?
So yes, the simple answer, they can definitely vary. The last time Darlington Nuclear Reactor was renewed, there was a lot of issues raised at the day 2 public hearing. So they decided to actually defer decision and have a 3rd day of hearings. And you hear 2 days. It doesn't necessarily mean it's confined to a 24-hour period. So often the day 2 can go, if you get a lot of interest in a file, it can go over a span of 2 or 3 or 4 days. One of the first meetings that I had to present was to considering the environmental assessment for the potential refurbishment of the Gentil 2 reactor. Obviously, we've just recently heard that that may not go ahead. But that hearing, I think there was 75 interveners, and it went over a span of 3 days. And actually, a couple of the hearings were held in the evening to allow other people to attend. So they have flexibility under the rules of procedure. But those are generally done through only written submissions of the staff and the proponent, although a public notice is posted on our website. So it's a very administrative and very quick matter just to make that minor adjustment that has no impact on safety. So there is flexibility under the rules. Any other questions? I think I've talked about this, but maybe I'll cover it really quickly. Just as opposed to other tribunals or commissions in the federal government or provincially, we tend to be fairly informal. You may not think it when you're sitting in front of it or watching a commission, but the proponents are typically not represented by lawyers. If you were to watch a CRTC hearing, which governs all radio communication, generally the proceedings are presented by lawyers. It's a very formal process, impossible to follow. At the commission hearings, it's the CEOs and the VPs who make the presentations, engineers who are answering the questions, and scientists. It may be harder to follow in a different area, but it's not very legalistic. So they're fairly informal, but the commission it is a quasi-judicial tribunal, which means it has the authority to issue a summons. I couldn't tell you if it ever has, I believe not. They can examine persons under oath, they can require production, they can enforce orders. So they do have that strength of a formal quasi-judicial tribunal. They're required to maintain a public record, so going back to 1946, or at least to the CNSC, if there's any decision that you're interested in, we have a record of the hearings, the transcripts of the hearings, the reasons for decisions, all the material that supported those decisions is all maintained in a public record. Maybe the last thing I'll say about hearings before we go is they have the authority to cite for contempt. They can maintain order in the hearings, so if there's obstructions. I talked about hearings, now I'll talk about meetings. The meetings are actually, so we have our rules of procedure for our hearings, we have our bylaws for our meetings. Essentially, meetings are the same thing as hearings as far as what you see. The commission tribunal is assembled, they hear information, but there's no decision coming out of it. So there's no specific licensing decision coming out of it. That's a big difference between a hearing and a meeting. Generally, they're held once a month in concert with other public hearings. So you'll have the hearing matter, you hear the information, you'll move on to the commission meeting and hear information related to that. The bylaws govern the management and the conduct of the meetings. And really, they just cover everything else the commission does. So in response to the Fukushima accident in Japan, CNSC staff presented to the commission their assessment of our own regulatory framework, our own practices, and the security of our own facilities. That was done at a public meeting. We heard about the staff update on the performance of non-reactor facilities. That's going in, I believe, October. That's done at a commission meeting. Early notification reports are the mechanism that staff can let the commission know of significant events that happen. If there's an accident, a spill, a malfunction at one of the facilities, those are done through event notification reports. Those are also discussed at commission meetings. And more important to me, because that's what I do in my day-to-day job, they also consider decisions on legislative policy or administrative matters. So that also includes making of new regulations or changes to regulations and the approval of regulatory documents that I talked about earlier. The meetings are open to the public, of course. They're webcasts similar to the hearings, but there isn't a formal mechanism for interveners to participate in meetings. So generally, it'll be CNSC staff presenting at meetings, and occasionally, if it's respect to a specific licensed facility, you may have the proponent. There are some examples at the annual the report on the performance of the power reactor industry. The findings of the staff are presented publicly, and public has an opportunity to comment. Often the public participation in meetings will be written only, so they're not as formal as hearings in terms of the overall procedure and process. Again, similarly, if they're dealing with secret matters, they may go in camera to have those discussions. So I mentioned earlier regulation making. You won't ever get to see that because that's done in camera. Any potential draft regulations at that stage in the process are considered cabinet conference, which means basically secret. I need to know only. And I think I already covered that last bullet. So I talked about our website, our subscription center, all the notices, all the agendas, all the decisions, all the transcripts are posted on our website. The notices are pushed out to the people on our subscription center. The commission member documents, which are the documents that really we've just called any documents that are submitted for information to the commission. Those are called commission member documents. Those aren't actually posted on our website, but they are available for upon request from the Secretariat. So in the notice, if it's a matter in which you're interested, there's contact information associated with the notice, and you can signal, hey, I'm interested in this, send me information that becomes available, and they'll take care of that and forward that to you. All public hearings and meetings, all public hearings, I think meetings as well, have verbatim transcripts. So you'll often hear, if you're presenting, in response to every question, even if it's the 75th I've dealt with, I'll say Colin Moses for the record. So in the transcript, you can clearly say it's me who's answering that question. They're posted on our website as well. It's really interesting and actually frustrating. You know, you get, after you've participated in a public hearing or public meeting, they'll give you the output of the transcription machine that they have, and you get to review it. But the key thing is that's the public record. So when you're reviewing it for accuracy, not necessarily of what was said, but accuracy of the transcription. So it'll capture things like, and laughter. I don't know if laughter is actually captured, but the dots, and like you can see, here I think I'm presenting my information really clearly to you. We have video camera records, so I'll have that to review, but if I were to review the transcription, it looked like I'm going all over the place and not presenting it consistent. So I love those transcripts, especially when they capture me. The reasons for decision are posted on the website. So they basically summarize the hearing, the matters that were considered, the specific issues that were discussed, and the reasons the commission came to whatever decision they did come to. Lynn talked earlier about the participant funding program. It's typically issued for hearing matters and major hearing matters. And it's actually really a useful tool because it's something we never had before. So we can actually, to bring information that wouldn't normally have been presented at commission tribunal. So, one of the first examples or first uses of the commission, of the participant funding program was an individual, I think he was a high school student or maybe a college student, who was just interested in the views of youth in the community around the facility. And so he was funded to do a survey of high school students of what their views are around the matter before the commission tribunal. So it's as simple as that, or often for much more detail, that we use that participant funding program.